What's up, guys? We're back for the fourth episode, the Bit from the Beach webinar. I'm here with Ira Waldman. Ira, say what's up to the people.
What's up, guys? I used to be an intern. Now I'm full-time at BD, and we're stoked.
Yeah, we're stoked. Ira's done with college and he's a working man now. So welcome to the industry.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, so we're here to talk to you guys about summer surf fishing. If you're not familiar with the first three episodes of the webinar, we started off last year in fall. We picked up again and did a winter episode in January. We did a spring episode a few months ago. And instead of spacing this one out, we kind of are coming back quicker so we can get you guys the information before the summer really kicks off. Surf fishing has been heating up a lot lately. Thanks to these guys, I've been able to get out there and kind of catch a variety of species this summer, which has been super nice in between tuna trips and whatnot, and getting out to the beach nice and close and light line fishing. And Benjie too. Benjie the other day, I don't know if you guys follow Benjie on Instagram. He had a couple real good shots, one really nice size Corbina, and then a good halibut your buddy caught on it was Lucky Craft, I believe, right?
Yep.
So yeah, well, without further ado, we'll kick this thing off. I want to say a big thank you to Lucky Craft for partnering up with us for this webinar. We got a couple jigs to give away. Towards the end of the webinar, we'll ask a question. We got our new line of clothing that just came out about an hour ago. It's our clothing collab with Haggard Pirate. We'll be giving away a hat. As you can see, Ira and I are wearing the new shirts. So after this is over, head over to the BD store and check out that sick lineup of stuff we got going. So so thank you guys for being here. We got professional surf fisherman Bill Varney, we got tackle expert Anthony Cannuli, and then we got the famous YouTuber Benjie Kim here to bring everything along. So why don't I let you guys introduce yourselves? Bill, why don't you start off? Some of these people might not know who you are, so give them a quick background of who you are and why you're here.
All right, that's great. So I'm Bill Varney. If you don't know me, I'm fourth, fifth generation from Southern California. Big surf fisherman. Started surf fishing probably in the early '60s and started working around '66 or '67, collecting bait. Did that for about 8 years or so. And you might know me from my book, Surf Fishing: The Light Line Revolution. Kind of covers everything from finding fish at the beach, rod and reel combinations, baits, all the different things that you need to do. We just got done with a great surf fishing clinic. We had a Bolsa Chica. We had about 70 folks down there. And along with that, we had 10 scientists from NOAA who were testing the fish for DDT, which was really interesting. So that was great. We had a great gathering there. We caught all kinds of fish, Corbina, spot fin, and perch mostly, but a few leopard sharks and a few other things. Got an angel shark and few other things there. So it's been a really good surf fishing summer, and we'll give you more information about that in just a few minutes when we talk about it.
Awesome. Wow, that's pretty crazy. I don't even know what an angel shark is. I'd love to pick your brain about that at some point. But yeah, Anthony, tackle expert, Save on Tackle up in LA. How you doing? Why don't you let everyone know who you are and what's going on?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, guys. My name's Anthony. I manage Save on Tackle. One of the things that we do specialize in is the surf fishing, anywhere from perch, Corbina, halibut, all the way up to the sharks and rays. That's how I got to meet Benjie and some of you guys. So definitely stoked to be here and help out with anything we can to get you guys dialed in.
Awesome. Well, yeah, and then last but not least, Benjie, why don't you tell everyone what's going on? How's your summer been and how you doing?
What's up, man? Yeah, the summer's heat. I think we're gonna get into it. We were talking about before, man. The fishing's really hitting the sweet spot. So, but yeah, my name is Benjie. I am just stoked to actually be here with you guys and being able to share this time with specifically Bill and Anthony. My story with surf fishing is about 5 or 6 years ago. I walked into Big Fish, the Big Fish tackle shop in Seal Beach, just wandered in there because there was a tackle shop by the ocean. And I saw Bill's book, The Light Line Revolution, and I'm like, that looks so fun. And that, no way, light line surf fishing. And so that was really what took me down that rabbit hole, actually, when I was just getting started. And so what an honor it is to share these times with Bill, man, like seriously, and like super cool. And then as I was And then when I was fully immersed in my addiction, and really, for those of you guys that love fishing, I think we can all say that we're addicted to this, just every aspect of it, from the hunt, from the night before, from the gear prep, to just imagining and then actually getting out there and setting the hook on that first one. Like I was just fully immersed in that obsession, and then ended up at Save on Tackle, and got obsessed with trying to figure out how to catch a fish with the stinking Lucky Craft. And this is a true story, talking to Anthony and saying, how do you work this thing, and having him treat me, the newcomer, like he treats every newcomer at his shop, with respect, and not scoffing at me because I don't know what the heck I'm talking about, and just taking care of me. So years pass, here I am, started a YouTube channel, and one of the things I love to say is, if I can catch a stinking fish, you definitely can catch a stinking fish. And my passion is really with the channel to help you catch fish. So grateful to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, stoked. So some of you guys may have seen the first few episodes, some of you not. When we started the first few, we all had never really met. And trade show season kind of kicked off. We got to hang out a little bit, fish a little bit and whatnot. So we all kind of know each other pretty well. We're in the same circle and stuff, which is really, really cool that we're all getting together here for this episode. I know summer is like really the ideal time to be surf fishing, when it comes to winter, and sometimes even spring, where you're really trying a lot harder for a lot less return. So super stoked. If you guys are not familiar with how we do these things, we do 4 main segments. We're going to start with tackle, so the ideal rod and reel. I got some of the questions you guys had asked when you signed up. A lot of questions about tackle. What rod should I be using? What reel should I be using? Whatnot, into line, hook size, weights, and everything. We're going to cover all that. Then we're going to get into rigging. What type of rig should you be using for this type of year, and everything that encompasses that. Then we'll get into bait. Are we doing sand crabs? Are we doing artificials? What's the best thing to use, and when and where? And then we'll go into the final segment, which is finding fish at the beach, which is probably one of the harder things to do, is to, just not cast a line straight out. This isn't really this isn't a seminar or webinar full of people who are sitting down in a chair drinking beers and casting beyond the surf and waiting for something to happen. We're pretty active surf fishermen, cover a lot of ground. Finding fish at the beach is very important. So let's just kick off the tackle segment. We got Anthony, he's working day in, day out, Save on Tackle. He knows the ins and outs. Had a lot of questions about rod, reel, and what size line, what weighted line, egg sinkers, hooks. Let's dive right into that.
Right on. Summertime is one of my favorite times for gearing up for the light line stuff. This is you could use a wide range of stuff, and really based on your skill level kind of adjust a little bit, anywhere from a slightly heavy trout rod all the way up to a light bass rod. Typically we have a lot lower winds in the summer. Our swell isn't as big typically, so you can get into some shorter rods, some lighter weight rods, a 3,000 size reel. I still stick with the 3,000 size reel just for line capacity. It's the same reel I use on my wintertime rods that are typically a little longer, slightly heavier. But you've got stuff like the Phoenix Feather. They make that's a super lightweight rod. It's very minimalistic. There's no cork or anything to get damaged. It's a very, very good rod. It's very, very similar in appearance to the Trifecta Light. So that makes it very, very nice to walk around with all day, especially on these hot days. Reels don't change. It's the same reels I use in the winter. So for those of you who haven't heard the last couple segments, Daiwa Fuego 3000 is still probably one of my #1 go-tos. Shimano makes the Nasti, another incredible reel that, right off the bat is easy to grab. The Daiwa has the Penn Battle. That's another good one. It runs a little bit heavier, but if if your brand is Penn, then that's a good reel to use. They're my 3 big ones, but based on your budget, there's plenty of reels out there. Your surf reel typically gets beat up. So if you want to go to a less expensive reel, like a Shimano Sedona, Sahara, or Sienna, something a lot less expensive, you're definitely more than welcome to. In terms of the egg sinkers, now's when you see me bringing a lot of the light egg sinkers to the beach. So I'll typically, on my personal box, I have anywhere from 1/8 all the way up to 1 ounce going with me, and I sell the little boxes. I just put my own little kit together, and that's what I have. Sometimes I see this Corbina in real shallow in the morning before all the people get there. So I'll do an 1/8 or even a 1/4 ounce little slider. Small swivels, usually just something simple on the swivels. The Danielson swivels work pretty well. And then if you want to go fancy, Spro or, Owner, they all have some good ones. And then on the hooks, a little variety of hooks is good. Number 6 mosquito hook by Owner, not the Mosquito Light, just the regular mosquito, tends to do well, especially with 6-pound test line, which we're using a lot right now. If you want to go 8, you can, but 6 and 8 will be the 2 number 1s that I'm promoting. And then the number 6 mosquito, that'll let you do some of the live sand crabs, and it'll also let you do the Berkeley Gulp camo sandworms in the 3-inch, or fondly referred to as perch crack. And then, of course, your Lucky Craft. And then this time of year as well, I like bringing out my Castmasters and crocodiles still, because you will see at some of the beaches, you'll see the bonita starting to show up really close. And it's pretty fun to just, swap that out for a heavy metal jig and just bomb cast it in there and try to get onto some of those slightly more exotic fish from the surf.
Awesome, Anthony. So a quick question that came in that I also had. Someone was asking, do you guys at Save On carry Lamiglass rods? And I'd like to expand that more to steelhead rods, because I know in the winter and spring, I use a 9-foot steelhead rod. I find that works pretty well. So are there solutions kind of like that you guys have at Save On?
Pretty much all the rods that we promote for the surf fishing will be the salmon steelhead rods. That'll be your 9-foot, more parabolic rod. We do carry Lamiglass. The X11 series is a really good rod. It comes in at a pretty aggressive price point for the quality that you're getting. One of the downsides that we're experiencing right now is availability. So we are having some supply chain issues that are still carrying over on the Lamiglass in particular. But we do stock them. I do every week go through the inventory list, and whatever I can find that they have, I'll cherry pick the SKUs and try to keep it in. But it does vary it's very volatile. It's the most variance that we get out of all the brands we work with. So I still carry the Shimano Claris if you want their salmon steelhead rod. I still carry the Phoenix stuff. Lamiglass, like I said, when I can get it, I definitely keep those in stock. For a really good rod that's still in a very aggressive price point, the Kunin rods, they're like $50 to $80 depending upon the model, and it's very parabolic. They're not fancy, but for the price point, they're an incredible rod.
Awesome. Yeah. So, Joe, I asked that question. You're looking for somewhere in OC. Just make the small drive up to Santa Fe Springs. Go see Anthony at Save On. He's going to help you out. So, yeah, I see a lot of questions coming in here, guys, but we'll address those as we go through each section here, focusing on tackle. Bill, I saw you get up and grab something out of the background, a little setup. What are you going to show us?
Well, I first of all, I just wanted to let everybody know that, Save On Tackle is one of the best tackle shops in all of California. I moved a few years ago from Huntington Beach, but I lived there for 25 years, excuse me. And I would drive up to Orenday Road all the time to go to Save On, because they had such a great selection on everything from rods and reels and all the terminal tackle and all that stuff that you need. So definitely go see Anthony, and that is a fantastic tackle shop, and things are really well priced there. A couple of things that I grabbed was, hook wise, I like to use these Gamakatsu split shot drop shot hooks, 50409. And I'll use them in a size 1, a 2, or a 4. Normally, I won't fish a 6. It's a little bit too small for me. But what makes these different and similar to those are the Owner Mosquito, both the light ones and the regular ones, is that they're just black steel. So if you have to leave these in the fish because it swallowed the hook, what you find with perch, not so much with Corbina so much, but with perch and sometimes spot fin, you can just cut your line off as short as you can, and these will rust out in just a couple of days. So it's really important to try to use these black hooks and not go with anodized hooks. if you can avoid it, or chrome or zinc plated hooks, because they take longer to rust out. They will rust out, and those red hooks are really effective in the surf, but you have to realize they'll take a little longer for those to rust out. And other than that, yeah, just some of the rules I use for rigging is the bigger the surf, the heavier the sinker. So I've got the Carolina rig set up here at my desk, of course. And the Carolina rig is made up of that sliding egg sinker. I'm going to use a 3/4 ounce sliding egg sinker if it's windy or the swell's big, a 1/4 ounce, a really light one if it's very calm there. So the bigger the surf, the heavier your sinker. You want to be right on the bottom because that's where the surf fish feed. And then below that, I've got a 6mm bead. I use a clear bead in the summer because Corbina have extremely good eyesight. And then I'll use a colored bead in the winter. And then, like Anthony said, I'll use a swivel below that, a 10, a 12, or a 14 size black swivel. Once again, I want it black. So in this case, it lays down in the sand. It looks like a grain of sand down there. I don't want a brand new brass or a zinc plated one because light will shine off of it. And then anywhere from 12 inches to 24 inches of 6-pound fluorocarbon leader. And then one of the hooks we talked about at the bottom there. And that could be one of these Gamakatsu or the owner mosquito hooks, or maybe a longer style hook if you're fishing worms, which would be like a sprout hook from Mustad, or Gamakatsu also sells worm hooks. So that's the rig we use all the time.
Awesome, Bill. So when you're going down to the surf, what rod and reel, what's your go-to?
Well, I'm normally going to fish 2, really maybe 3 rods and reels. If I'm fishing bait fishing, I'm going to have a long rod, a 9-foot, 8.5 or 9-foot rod that I'm fishing for outside, not outside the surf line, but as far as I could cast. So it's kind of in the in-between zone. I'm going to use a little longer rod for that because I can get a longer cast, and I can also be accurate with that, especially if I'm fishing along the side of a jetty. But then on the other hand, if I'm just walking along the beach, I'm hunting for Corbina. I've got my polarized glasses on. I'm looking in the water, trying to see and be able to cast in front of them. I'll fish a shorter rod, about a 7-foot rod. And once again, the same thing that Anthony said, we're looking at these steelhead, these SST rods, steelhead, salmon, and trout rods really have the best action for the surf. So when I'm fishing Corbina, a shorter rod. And then if I'm like Benjie and I'm throwing the Lucky Craft, the Rapala, a Castmaster, a Crocodile. I'm fishing an 8 to 9 foot rod with higher pound test, 8 to 10 pound test monofilament, and having a longer rod so I can make a longer cast. That's the thing when you're fishing lures, you always want to cover a much longer distance. And it's not only that you're casting straight out for a long distance, but if you cast at an angle, 10 o'clock or let's say 2 o'clock angle, you can cover so much more of the bottom by having a longer cast than a shorter cast. With bait, you don't normally need to worry about that because the fish that are on the very inside are in that churned water area and their food's getting churned up right there. It's not outside on a sandbar, which may be where the halibut are or other fish transitioning from the outside to the inside.
Awesome. Well, yeah, so I mean, Benjie, I know everyone's probably gonna wondering what type of rod and reel you're using. I know you got a little bit of a marriage, maybe domestic partnership with Phoenix over there. I know you'd mentioned the elixir and the trifecta and all that. So why don't you run us through what you're using?
Oh man, summertime is my heart is torn in the summer. I want to do everything. But the thing is, so halibut. So I think like halibut, white sea bass is like that style, like big game is kind of my favorite thing to do, but it's a year-round fishery. At least for halibut is, you can target halibut January to December for the most part. So summertime, the Corbina, you talk to the OGs or the ones that are really keyed in on Corbina, and you can catch them year-round too. But for the most part, traditionally speaking, Corbina season is maybe May or June. You see them start to trickle in. And then June, July, August is like the sweet spot for especially sight fishing Corbina. And when you're going to see them, tailing in 6 inches of water and feeding in the skinny. And so that was actually my first obsession when I started surf fishing was sight fishing Corbina. And so right now, you'll more than likely see me. kind of put the Lucky Craft setup a little bit to the side. I'll still take it out like here and there, but you'll see me with my sight fishing setup, and it's constantly evolving. And right now, where it's at right now, and I was just telling Ira and Cam before we started, right now I'm using a 1000 size reel Daiwa Ballistic 1000. I have that spooled up with 8-pound braid, and I just put the Phoenix Elixir with it, paired it up with the Phoenix Elixir, and that's my sight fishing rig. I think the Elixir is a 7'8", but I really love that ultralight for sight fishing Corbina, targeting them, literally when they're swimming with their backs out of the water. And that's the setup that I use. And I'll use a size 10 owner mosquito, size 8 or size 10 owner mosquito for sight fishing Corbina. So you'll always see me with that setup. And then my Carolina rig setup, you'll see me with either the Trifecta Light 903 or the Trifecta Light 904. They're actually pretty similar, but my preferred Carolina rig rod would be the 904, surprisingly, because the weight rating is up to an ounce. And so it gives me that flexibility where if it is a little bit rougher, I can feel confident putting it up to an ounce on it. I don't feel as confident to put an ounce on the 903 as it's only rated to 3/4, and it is extremely sensitive, and I don't want to risk messing around with that tip. So typically speaking, you'll see me with the Carolina rig 904 with either the 3000 size Daiwa Fuego LT, which Anthony talked about. I really love that reel. It's a incredible bang for buck reel. You're talking about $100, and then right now I have the 4000 size Daiwa Certate, and I'm just trying that out. It's a little bit of a nicer reel, but it's just an investment I made, and I actually really enjoy that too.
Awesome. Well, yeah. So in case you guys didn't write all that down, this is going to live on the site and BD Outdoors under the Surf Fishing channel. So if you're not taking notes now and you don't know exactly which rod and reel to use, you can go see this tomorrow or the next day and come back and visit and listen to what they said so you can get geared up. We're going to cut to a quick break here. Hang on for about a minute. Check out the San Diego travel guide, and we'll see you in a minute.
Awesome, guys. Welcome back. So in this section, we're going to dive deep into the rigging. We're going to touch on Carolina rig, go in depth into all the different options that you have with that. We covered hooks, but I want to go into line, weight choices, different colored beads, material for different beads, kind of stuff like that. And then also any other rigs that we might use in the summer, Corbina, sight fishing, stuff like that. So Bill, do you want to just quickly show us that real quick? And we'll throw a graphic up just covering the Carolina rig, what line your main line is to leader, and then also the length that you like and how that might change for the summer fishing.
Okay, well, I always fish 6-pound monofilament when I'm bait fishing. I want there to be a lot of stretch in my line when it comes to hooking fish, and that was why I won't fish a braided line personally. But it's all a personal preference. Some people like use braid, some like to use mono. I prefer mono as my main line because it's real stretchy. As I said, the sliding sinkers, and like if you can see this one, it's really gray. It looks old, and that's really what you want when you get these and they first come out of the bag. at the tackle store. They're very bright because it's new lead. And I always spray them with a little bit of water and put them out in the backyard till they turn this dark gray color because I want it laying down in the sand and being as natural as possible. And then the leader material, the rule on the leader is the bigger the surf, the shorter your leader. So if the surf was, let's say, waist high or larger, and let's say you had a 24 or let's say even 36-inch leader, your bait's going to be way up here by the surface because of all the current. And of course, we know that surffish feed on the bottom. So the bigger the surf, the shorter your leader. So if I was to go down there and the waves were chest high, let's say, I'd probably fish a 10 or 12-inch leader. If I went down there and it was calm and the waves were, gosh, I was fishing Huntington Beach about a week and a half ago. You could have launched a boat from the beach. It was so small. I mean, the surf was about this big, about 4-inch surf. I would have used a 3-foot leader that day because it was so calm then. So the bigger the surf, the shorter your leader. The bigger the surf, the heavier your sinker needs to be.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, of course, this time of year, the Carolina rig is the go-to. I see some questions coming through about baits and stuff like that. We'll touch on that in the next section. Yeah, Bill, you kind of talked about how it changes for summer. If you guys tuned into the last few webinars, we always talk about leader size and hook size and whatnot. Benjie, when it comes to this sight fishing stuff, right? So you had mentioned earlier before we hopped on that you were fishing straight braid. And I know that's super strange to some people, me in particular. Touch on that a little bit, because there's not many fish at all where you're fishing straight braid.
Yeah, I mean, I can only share my experience, and I don't want to sight fishing Corbina is like, I'm not good at it by any means, but I love it. I love it so much. And along the way, I've been able to meet a couple of Corbina mentors who have kind of taught me what they've been doing for a very, very long time. And both of these guys use straight braid. And I was like, what? Like, no, like that goes against everything that I know and have been taught. But because I fished with them and because I watched them, and one particular day I was out at Torrey Pines in San Diego with, my Corbina mentor, and I skunked using a Carolina rig, and he was using straight braid with I think a size 12 hook, finding the biggest sand crab he could find. And I literally was next to him and I watched him pull 4 Corbina between the sizes of 20 to 23 inches in like a 2.5 hour span. And I just watched him do it over and over and over again. And so I know that it works. And so I was really stubborn with it, but I've kind of finally taken it up and turned it into what I do now. It's straight braid. I use a size 10 owner mosquito. I put a little tiny split shot right above the hook, like maybe a few inches above the hook. And the idea is to, number one, I identify the Corbina behavior, because the idea is you want to make your cast when that Corbina is charging and heading high up onto the sand, when they're going to be feeding off the beds, or when they're going to hit the edge of the lip, because they're going to be the water's going to coming back and washing the crabs back right on that lip of the front trough, like right in front of you. And so the idea of it is to pitch your sand crab right where you think that Corbina is going to wind up looking for food. And if you can get that sand crab right in front of them, and then the split shot keeps that sand crab pinned right onto the sand, and you want him to start digging. And as soon as that Corbina sees that crab digging, it's like a reaction strike. They are incapable of not biting at that point. And because I've seen my mentors do it like so well, like I know it works. I'm still definitely work in progress, but because I've seen it, and I've pinned a few, I pinned a couple days ago on straight braid, but it takes me a lot longer. But yeah, that's kind of my obsession. And I think the way it makes sense to me all around, regardless of how you're using, Carolina rig works, light line works, heavier line works. In my opinion, it's how you're presenting your bait and the timing. Like when you make your cast and what your crab is doing or whatever your bait is doing when the Corbina sees it. And so if that crab is upside down and still in the water, the Corbina will bolt away. They know, but if they see that crab digging down, they cannot not bite, in my experience. So
Interesting. Yeah, so I mean that is pretty crazy. I'd love to come out with you sometime and see you do that. So Anthony, like we're talking all about all different sorts of Carolina rigs here. I mean, you're kind of out there every day seeing what people are buying and what's working and what's not. What's the top of the line fluoro for this setup for people's leaders? I know there's tons of different brands out there, tons of different pound tests. What are you seeing is working the most for people that are coming and talking to you?
So my two favorite right now, I really like the really small spools that come from the Seaguar Blue Label. It works really well. It's got good abrasion resistance for rubbing up in that sand, and they come in really small spools. So it's easy to have like maybe 4 pound, 6 pound, and 8 pound in your bag without taking up a whole lot of room or adding virtually any weight. If you want something a little bit softer, the Daiwa J Fluoro is another really good one. Both of those are exceptional and more than fine for the fluoro. And I think the most important thing is, we hear from, Bill over there. He's obviously caught more fish than most of us combined. And then Benjie over there out there, practicing and preaching it daily. They're using 2 completely different setups and 2 completely different techniques, even though they're light lining it. So just don't get caught up on, reading what the textbook says. Like, you make your own recipe and it'll work. There's no real wrong answer as long as you're catching fish. So just keep practicing and putting the time in, and it'll start coming together. For the guys that are doing more aggressive hook sets, or they have a much softer rod, then I definitely set them up with, if they're doing the more aggressive hook sets, I do the mono. If they're doing a softer rod, and they're a little more new to the game, then I'll set them up with the fluoro or the braid. So it just depends on your style of fishing and what you're used to, and you'll piece it together and figure out. Pretty much everybody from me gets mono to start with, so you get comfortable fishing in the surf, and you start figuring out how to not let your rig get all tangled up, because that braid's very unforgiving when it gets knotted up. Definitely usually start them off with 6-8 pound mono this time of year.
Okay, good to know.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Quick question that came in from John. This is directed at Bill. When it comes to rigging, can you use a Gamakatsu salmon egg instead of a bead?
That's a good question. I haven't tried that yet. The salmon eggs, which are made out of a plastomer, is very flexible. So I might be a little bit afraid of it breaking, the splitting basically and popping off, which you're not going to have happen with either a plastic or a glass bead, but it's certainly worth a try. There's been so many people over the years who've come and said, well, I like go trout fishing, and what do you think about this? And I say, it sounds like it would work, get out there. And then they'll come back 2 weeks later and say, look at these pictures, it's unbelievable. So really, if you've got a feeling for it, go out there and do it and try it. And exactly what Anthony says, there is no specific right way to do it. There's just the way to do it to catch fish. And the best way to learn to do that is try some different things. Another rig I like to use is a uni to uni knot, where I have my main line, and then I have 3 or 4 pound, and 3 pound would be like Iserline pink fluorocarbon, where I use about a 20-inch leader that is just a uni to uni knot with a small hook on the end of it and a sand crab with either a pinch on weight like a gremlin, which is a kind of a triangular, Anthony would know these, like a triangular little weight that's used for freshwater bass fishing. They're really good because they don't get much tangled on them because they're in a cone shape, or no weight at all, and just cast my sand crab into the surf and let it carry it back and forth and wait for those Corbina to come and feed on it. Or another really good technique, which I learned by watching somebody who literally had a stringer of Corbina back in the day, was going out at a place like Newport Beach, where it's very gradual there. You can walk out 100 feet and it's 4 feet deep, versus other places you walk out 50 feet and it's 20 feet deep. It's very gradual. And so you hike out into the surf about up to your waist, cast out sideways, and either stand there very still or slowly make your way into shore, letting out line, and just allow that unweighted sand crab to be washed back and forth in the surf. And just like Benjie said, as long as it's alive and it's trying to dig in and then getting pulled out and digging in, it's just irresistible.
Awesome. Well, I just before we go into the next section, I had a question come through earlier that I thought was pretty interesting. It doesn't necessarily relate directly to rigging, but Danny had said, "I'm new to surf fishing. Are they safe to eat?" And I wanted to kind of like touch on that and the way that we surf fish and how you guys feel. Personally, Danny, I've never eaten any of the fish that I've caught from the surf, despite the fact that I've seen tons of perch in, different markets and stuff like that. For the most part, we're all practicing a pretty healthy, safe and release or catch and release here to, I wouldn't say necessarily protect the fishery, but more so that there are plenty of other fish in the sea that I feel like are better to eat. But then again, I've never really eaten a corbina before. So what do you guys think?
I would definitely look up on the like the DFG website and see what the recommended amount that you can eat safely, what they're saying the safe amount to eat is. Sometimes they'll tell you like 3 ounces, in a 6 times in a 6-month period. So basically like 3 ounces a month or something like that. That tells you there's an awful lot of pollutants in that fish. So definitely do the research through the state agencies that are testing them frequently. There's quite a bit of testing that gets done. I would say that anytime there's a high runoff year like this year, I wouldn't be touching any of those fish. A lot of beaches were closed down with all that rain just because of how toxic the water was. That's not good for the fish or us, and that stuff isn't going to cycle through their systems really quickly. So I would do my due diligence and go through some kind of, agency and see what they're saying, but definitely be very cautious in the winter and spring if there's rain and runoff and all that.
Awesome. Yeah. You guys heard it best from Anthony, do your research, especially after the winter we've had. Yeah. So, the rigging is all straightforward. We are going to be moving on to bait here. We're going to cut out, take another break. We'll see you guys in about a minute.
All right, guys, welcome back. So in this section, we're going to cover bait, everything you need to know fishing bait, both whether that's bait like sand crabs or artificial lures, everything for the summer. So some of the things we're going to cover is size, with sand crab size, different applications for different sizes, how to find those, how to capture them, how to store them, and then also something like whether they have eggs, no eggs, how to rig them, If you're, say, fishing those larger sand crabs, sight fishing, how are you going to rig those bigger ones on a smaller hook? So whoever wants to start this off, let's get into bait.
I'll start. We can talk about sand crabs maybe to start out with. This year has been an incredible year for sand crabs. They are absolutely everywhere, and one of the reasons we've seen so many is this was the first year in about a decade that we saw the water temperature go below 55 degrees. So sand crabs in Southern California, there's basically three variety of sand crabs around the world. There are ones that occur above in cool water above, let's say, Point Conception, all the way up to Canada. They're almost always hard shell. They can get really big. Then below there, all the way down to about Cedros Island, there's ones that are the ones that we commonly know. They occur when the water turns about 60 degrees. They come up to the surface. They begin spawning. They lose their shells at about 62 degrees. And then there's sand crabs that you find in the tropics, which would be like the East Cape, Fiji, Hawaii, Greece. I found them all over that are very similar, but are almost white with little black spots on them and longer back legs. So there's different varieties depending on the temperature of the water. But in Southern California, the best place to find them is, waiting for a high tide period and using a crab net, whether it's the Promar net or the Crab and Go, which we have. Got one of those I'll show you. Which is just basically a scoop where you just take it and scoop up the sand and rinse the water through it, and the sand crabs will fall out. But really, the very best place to find sand crabs, if you always want to be guaranteed to find them, and many times you can find them in the winter there too, is underneath piers. And as a matter of fact, there's one pier in Orange County. I'm not going to say which one it is. You guys can narrow it down out there because, there's only like 5 piers down there. Where I went last week and I put my Promar net down, and in 5 seconds, I had 300 sand crabs. There were literally millions of crabs in this one area. And I just got one scoop, picked out like 20 soft ones. I was done for enough bait for fishing for 2 days. So normally we look for those sand crabs at a high tide. They seem to occur a little bit more on the surface in the earlier morning and the evening at those tides when people aren't walking on the beach. As far as the sand crabs are concerned, they'll live about 3 days, maybe 4 days or so. So if you want to go Thursday and catch them and go fishing on Saturday, you're good. But the secret to sand crabs is they are air breathing, so don't put them in water. They'll just drown. Don't put them in the refrigerator. It's way too cold. They'll die in about 20 minutes. What I do is I just take a regular size ice chest, a frozen bottle of water. I put the bottle of water in one side, and then I put them in basically a dry plastic container on the other side inside the ice chest. It keeps the ambient temperature maybe around 60 degrees or so, which is their perfect temperature. And then I'll take a wet cloth and put it over the top of them. It doesn't have to be salt water. It can be fresh water also. Just keeps it nice and humid in there for them. And they will last about 3 or 4 days that way. And then when it comes to using the sand crabs, I match my hook size to the size of the sand crab. So if I have a bigger crab, like the size of my thumb, it'd be like a number 1 size hook. If it's a quarter size or so, it'd be maybe number 2. If it's the size of a dime, it'd be number 4 size hook. The other thing too is it's important to remember when fishing with sand crabs that you want to use the size of the crab that occurs in the greatest number in the area where you are. So if all the crabs are the size of a dime and you find some that are the size of a silver dollar, you would normally think big fish, big bait, but that doesn't work in the surf. Surf fish got big by being smart. Like a 20-inch Corbina is probably 15 years old, and it got that old by not eating anything that rolled by it. So always match your bait to the size of bait that occurs in the area where you are.
Interesting. Yeah. Talking about the volume of sand crab, actually a question had come in earlier from Dennis talking about where to find fish in Oceanside and what are some good places to fish. So Dennis, I'm in North County. I live in Encinitas. I fished all through Oceanside, Tyson Street, Wisconsin's down to Buccaneer, all the way in through, Leucadia, Encinitas and whatnot. And there's some good holes all over the place. And you know, the last few months, the sand crabs have been absolutely mental. They're everywhere. But on those open stretch of beaches where we don't have those piers, you rely on seeing those crab beds. I know we probably have an image we can throw up for you guys of what a crab bed looks like. It's a lot easier to see from the side when the tide goes down. It almost looks like there's like a flying V of birds swimming through the air, or flying through the air in the sand. So yeah, you know, find those crab beds, find the sizes that work. I actually had a ton of luck fishing like the molting crabs, which was super strange. It seemed like they got picked off a lot, but when I did hook a fish, it was a good sized fish. Benjie, I know you're spending a lot of time, you're more Santa Barbara, Ventura, North LA. What size sand crab? Where are you looking? You know, what's your go-to?
Yeah, I totally 100% agree with Bill. Under piers is pretty much like, you'll find them like sand crabs, like when it's like high tide and it's hot, like middle of the day, like, yeah, a lot of times you can find them everywhere. But if you just, like, for me, it's like time is of the essence, right? So just go straight to under a pier. And if there is like, so obviously they'll be around the pilings, but if there happens to be like a structure underneath the pier too, like a concrete type of structure, just they hug structure, like whether it's pilings or concrete or wood, just look next to it. Always next to jetties. Just look at those rocks, those two places, jetties and under piers. Like 100% is, I make a beeline there 90% of the time if it's the right season, 95% of the time. Yeah, just like Bill said, one scoop and you're done. Go on your way. For me, yeah, for sight fishing is very niche, guys, and so, you know, like, it's a very, very like small core of people who enjoy it. If you're not sight fishing, if I'm just casting into structure, I actually like the smaller sand crabs, like small to medium, and I like to pin like 2 of them on back to back, or just like one like smaller sand crab out, and that's what seems to get bit better, like when I'm just casting into structure. But when I'm sight fishing, I try to find the freaking silver dollars, and that it's just the way I've been taught. I don't have any science behind it, so, you know, I could be wrong, but it's what's worked for the people that have taught me, and it's what's worked for me. So, but again, it's a very niche technique. In general, you know, I feel like the mass majority of us that are surf fishing is we're walking down the beach. One of my favorite things to say is find the structure, find the fish. We just go down, try to find the hole, try to find the rips, try to find where the water's moving, and pitch the sand crab. You know, I like, again, so I don't know if you agree with me, Bill or Anthony, or you guys. I think like the little bit smaller ones tend to be a little better for that, but I don't know.
That's been my experience too. And also, Benji, you know, to add on to what you said, when you find those little tiny crabs, you know, I call it the smorgasbord. I'll put sometimes 4 of them on
Yeah,
there.
actually, me too. Yeah.
And it works. I've caught some really big fish on that because, you know, that what I do is I like to put them on so their back is up like this, and the first one their feet are down, and then I put the next one where its feet are on the back of the other one. Because if you see those little guys spawning, they I don't know what term to use, but they do a doggy style. They jump on one another's back, and they're on top of each other's back. So if you put them on your hook that way, like I said, don't be afraid to try a bigger bait, to try a smaller bait, to try 4 of them on your line, on your hook. It's funny, like you could go yesterday and the dime size ones are just killing it. And then you could go the next day and you can't get a thing on that dime.
Yeah.
And then you put 4 of those on there and it's wide open. So
Yeah.
be willing to have an open mind and try some different stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's what fishing is, right? The willingness and the ability to adapt as quick as possible. I mean, that's what the best fishermen do, I think. So I totally agree with that.
Awesome. So for any other bait, other than sand crabs, is there anything else that you guys are looking for to use in the surf?
Can I
for sure. I'll take that one, Benji, for a sec.
Go ahead.
Definitely on the other bait, the fish bites, you know, the artificial bloodworms that you can use and like have a much slower presentation on the really calm days. Or for the guys that don't want to aggressively walk around, you can do the bait and wait with like a high-low rig, or kind of set up a little drop shot setup, real low to the ground, and do the fish bites and the bloodworm scent or the squid scent works really well. The camo sandworms, I mean, that has to be in your box if you're fishing SoCal. That's a really good bait. And if you can't find the sand crabs right away, it's a great way to rig up and start fishing while you're walking the beach looking for the sand crabs. Couple other things we've seen work are those Z-Man crusties, the little tiny like sand crab looking plastics that you can kind of cast out. And especially when it's really calm, I found just hopping those on a really micro jig head, just hopping those back across the sand. Sometimes you'll see the more aggressive perch or even the corbina come up and tackle those. It's pretty cool to watch. For if you're not looking to if you're looking for more of the bait and weight squid, little tiny strips of squid, they'll catch a huge variety of fish in the surf. I don't like the anchovies and the sardines. They are effective, but keeping them on the hook and, finding ones that don't get all mushy super quick, that's a little harder to do. So usually a strip of squid, you can do a lot of repetitive casting without having to rebait. I think they'd be the top contenders for second place under the sand crab.
Mussel is really good too. Just have some magic thread with mussel. That's super good. And then go shrimp, go to Save on Tackle, pick up one of those Alvi pumps. But if you have to know where to find them, to pump them. But go shrimp is very good, but it helps to have the magic thread for that as well.
Yeah, awesome. When it comes to live baits, there are a bunch of different choice. I mean, when it just comes to baits, whether they're lures or live or semi-real, there's so many choices. Ghost shrimp has worked really well in the just past month or so for spot fin croaker, some really big ones down at Torrey Pines on those. You can find those at Seaforth Landing, carries them, live ones. Sometimes you can find them in Seal Beach. But there is a bait carrier who is importing them and should start getting them next week. And we should see them at a whole bunch of stores and hopefully up at Save-On, the ghost shrimp. So that's always a good thing. And the ghost shrimp, you can keep those alive for about 4 or 5 or 6 days. I just use a little plastic aquarium, 5-gallon aquarium. I put it about third full or so, half at the most, with salt water, and I just float a frozen bottle of water in there about twice a day. I put in a new bottle once or twice, keeps the water cold enough. When their metabolism goes way down, what happens with ghost shrimp is that they come in a plastic container, and when they urinate on one another, and here we go on one of these subjects again, boy, between this and the missionary position, so they urinate and that kills them. So what happens is when we put them in this cold water, their metabolism goes way down and they stop that activity and they last much longer and they actually get kind of crispy. So I'll actually take them to the beach in a little ice chest with a little ice water in there. But there's all kinds of worms. There's blood worms and there's lug worms, like these worms that are made by Shoreline Bait. And these are distributed throughout Southern California in both fresh and salt water. You can see what these worms look like on the inside, and they're usually, probably about 6 or 8 inches long or so. I'll normally use the entire worm and just put the hook. I'll use like a Sprout, one of those Mustad Sprout hooks, or a Gamakatsu worm hook, a nice long shank hook, and put about 3/4 of the worm up my line and about a quarter of the worm below it. Those work really good. The blood worms, which are very similar but about twice as expensive as these, those work really well for bait. As Benjie said, mussel works good. You can eat, and here's something to remember about the mussel. Once again, keep your mind open about different ideas. One is that you'll find basically 2 different varieties of mussel. One inside the harbor, much thinner shell and smaller. One outside the harbor on the jetties, much bigger. You go down on the Newport jetty, you'll find some that are like 14 inches long. On those big ones, when you open them up, just take off the lip. The lip almost looks exactly like one of these worms. It's about this long and it's about the thickness of a pencil. once again, just feed that up your hook and line and let that tail of it swing off. And that brown and that kind of burnt brown color and that orange works really, really well, especially later in the summer for big corbina, spot fin and stuff. Right now, June and July, they are just gorging on sand crabs. But just like you, if you had a filet mignon every night, how delicious is that? But 30 filet mignons in a row, and then all of a sudden your neighbor says, hey, will you come over tonight for lobster? And you're like, yeah, that sounds good. So it's the same thing with surffish. They'll feed on the same bait for a couple of months heavily, and then they'll look for something new. So another thing, once again, would be mussel this time of year. So you got lugworms, bloodworms, mussel, sand crabs. And then when it comes to the different semi-live type of baits, there's of course the gulp that Anthony talked about. This needs to be in everybody's tackle box. These 3-inch, or I guess they're 2-inch size, and there's a red one, and then of course these are the olive green. And then the other thing is the Gamakatsu baits, which are a plastomer that don't have any sauce that they're floating in. They're actually impregnated with fish oil in the plastomer itself. They stretch to about 7 times their length, and you rig these and these exactly the same way on the Carolina rig. So they work really well. And then with all of the baits now, I'm putting sand crabs and worms. I'm putting these Gamakatsu, one of these little salmon eggs, these are orange, on the very top of my hook, like on this hook, as an example. And they, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about sand crab eggs. These look like a sand crab egg or a group of eggs. And then they also have a fish odor to them. So what I do is I just let that sit right on top of the hook. And then my bait or worm or even a grub or Berkeley bait or Gamakatsu worm is right below that. And that color really attracts them. If that color was like way up your line, they wouldn't know what it was. But if it's adjacent to your sand crab, it just looks like eggs squirting out from around its tail there. And I know that somebody asked that question earlier, is it better to use sand crabs with eggs or without eggs? I would always say with eggs, because if you catch a bunch of sand crabs that have eggs and you have them in your basket or in a little cup and you smell them, they have a very strong odor because of those eggs. So I think that really helps. And of course, from a visual standpoint, that's what the fish are looking for, those eggs, and that's what they smell. And so it's a good addition to have the sand crabs that's got eggs with it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we're it's the summer episode, guys. We're actually already up. We're an hour in right now. We're clearly going to push ahead and finish off the final segment. We're going to cut to a break really quick. Then we're going to go over finding fish, and then we got some prizes to give away. So stick around. Hopefully, you don't have anywhere to be. We got another 20 minutes left in us. So we'll see you in a minute.
Try to catch me howling at the moon. 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 When it rains, it pours. Water's up to my chin. Won't stop fighting to the very end. Many men try to reach it. Many men have failed. Well, if you wanna get to heaven, you gotta raise a little hell. And I've been running from the Lord. Hope they won't shoot me down soon. They say no to sleepless nights. Will you find me? Hope you find me. when the sunrise.
Alrighty, guys, welcome back to our final segment here for the Bit from the Beach webinar. In this one, at the end, of course, we're going to do give away some prizes, but for now, we want to talk about finding fish. I want to know what you guys are looking for to identify the spots. No need to blow up any personal fishing hunting holes or anything like that. But, for someone that might be new to this, looking at the vast expanse of the Southern California coast, what are kind of the key elements that you guys are looking for when deciding where to start out, where to start fishing, looking for along the beach?
It's also good to touch on too. Is this specific to San Diego County? I saw a lot of questions come through on the sign up forms about LA and OC. I know we're a San Diego based group of dudes. Bill, I know you have a lot of experience down here. Benjie and Anthony, you guys have a lot of the LA North OC type stuff going on. So, whether it differs from county to county, beach to beach, Benjie, what are you looking for? I know you love structure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, find the structure, find the fish, 100%. I'm thinking about the Orange County beaches, I don't know. I think Bill would agree with me. I think Anthony would agree with me. I think literally every beach in Orange County can be good. I don't know if there's one beach that I think of that I'm I've never caught a fish there. I've caught a fish on every single one of those, good days. It just depends, So, I think when people say what's your favorite beach, Huntington Beach, but there's also a lot of real estate on Huntington Beach, but for what I'm looking for troughs. I'm looking for holes. I'm looking for anything that deviates from flat sand. Anything that contrasts. I'm looking at water movement. So just to give you a practical example, I've been scouting an area this past week and I've been to the same area 4 times. And honestly, if you're learning, I would invest 2 to 3 trips out to the same place for you to figure it out. I went to this particular stretch of sand at a low tide, and I saw so much structure. At a low tide, it's a cheat sheet. You don't need to know how to read the beach. You go out at a low tide, you're going to see the holes. What does a hole look like? It looks like a deeper part of the sand. It's not hard to see because the water's pretty much uncovered. So one part is really high, meaning if you were to walk out there, you'd be ankle deep in water. And then you look at the hole, even at the low tide, if you walked into it, you'd be thigh high. It's just right there in front of you. It doesn't have to be far out. So I'm looking at that. So just to give you a case study, I got there at 6 a.m. and it was like that. You can see the structure, but it was really sucked out. So I tried fishing it, but it was just too much. There wasn't enough water there. So I didn't see any fish and I didn't get bit in any of the structure I cast it out into. That was at 6 a.m. I came back at 10:30 and it was filled in. And it was harder to see what I saw at 6 a.m. But because I had the mental image, I even actually took out my phone and lined it up with the lifeguard towers that I was at. Just practically speaking, I knew that there was structure there and find the structure, find the fish. So we came back there, found a hole and started casting into it. And 4 hours later, when 4 hours earlier, I caught nothing. 4 hours later, I think a group of us caught about 25 to 30 Corbina and perch out of one little hole. Because I could see it. But if you're brand new to it, go out at low tide, scout, and come back. We caught 25 or 30 fish out of the same hole, throwing a Carolina rig. And don't sleep on the Lucky Craft, because out of that same hole, my friend was throwing a Lucky Craft, and he caught a really nice halibut. I didn't have a tape, but it was illegal. Probably 23-inch halibut out of the same hole. So find the structure, find the fish.
Awesome. Yeah, if you guys don't follow Benjie on Instagram, go check out his Instagram. There's a photo of that halibut. He damn near inhaled the whole entire jig too. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I can kind of relate to that as well. On my local beaches, we were talking right before we hopped on, I was there with the lady on one day, tide was low. We were just hanging out, having a few drinks. And I was like, man, the intertidal zone, there's holes everywhere. Came back on a high time 2 days later and had the best day of surf fishing I've ever had in my life. Kind of accredited to you guys, honestly, because of everything you've taught me over the last 3 episodes. So, yeah, super stoked on that. I can definitely relate to the idea of not just blind casting in a certain area. You got to find the rips. You got to find the troughs. Bill, what are you looking at? Whenever you go to the beach, I know I fished with you in Santa Barbara. You were pointing out a rock structure and the side of the rock structure to be on based on the swell coming in. What is your go-to when you get to the beach?
Well, if I want to catch fish, the very first thing that I do is I follow Anthony and Benjie around.
Follow Anthony around.
No.
But when I'm on my own, so I first of all completely agree with Benjie. You're looking for holes and troughs and anomalies at the beach. It's a little bit different fishing Corbina and spotfin and yellowfin and perch than it would be halibut. But in general, at beaches, whether they're California or elsewhere, you have dredged beaches where sand has been brought up using a barge system to make the beach much wider. Huntington Beach is a good example of that. Hermosa, Manhattan, Redondo, those are all dredged beaches where but like 40 feet of sand has been brought in to create a huge beach there. And then you have other beaches like Carlsbad or Malibu, Santa Barbara, where there's been no dredging and you have the same natural structure that you had 50,000 years ago. And so it depends on what type of beach you're on as to where the structure is going to be and when the best time to fish it is going to be. If you're at a beach that hasn't been dredged before, you can fish about low tide and high tide and find holes and structure and stuff to catch fish. On beaches that have been dredged, like Huntington Beach, parts of Newport, Redondo, Hermosa, Manhattan, Santa Monica, mostly best at high tide because there's very little natural structure. So there's just the holes and the troughs. And like Benjie said, I just go down there at low tide. I look at my tide chart. So if we are to look at the CCA sport fishing tide calendar, it's got graphs on here of high and low tide. I figure out whether I'm going to go at a high tide or a low tide, maybe around a moon period or so, depending on what the moon's doing. And I go down there at low tide. I find the troughs. I line them up with something behind me, Tower 22, the Red House, whatever it is. And then I look at the tide chart. I go back there when it's high tide and those holes are covered and I fish. I line myself up and I fish those areas. The other thing I always do, is when I'm standing on the shore, I look up and down and I watch people enter and exit the water as far as I can see in each direction. If I see somebody walking into the water and all of a sudden they dip down and they come back up again and off they go on their surfboard or swimming, I know there's a trough right there. And if that's 100 yards down in front of Tower 15, I wait till they're out of my way. I go down to 15 and I cast out right there. So there's so many things. There's rip currents, there's eddies that are caused by the direction of the wave. So just a real quick example, and I'll be done with this because I could talk about this for 4 hours. If you looked at a jetty, so you stood at the base of the jetty and you looked out into the ocean, and the swells were coming from the right, which would be the north, that means that on the left, which would be the south side of the jetty, it's creating an eddy circulation off of the tip, which is where fish normally stage, because not only is there water or air circulation in the water circulating there, but that's also where bait and food and mussels and all that are dragged into and they feed. So when you're looking at a jetty or you're looking at rock structure going out, try to find the downside of it and fish on that side first rather than the upside of it.
Awesome. Well, Anthony, do you have anything to add to this whole finding fish? I know you got tons of experience here, not only on tackle. So before we move into the prizes and concluding up this fourth episode, what do you got for us?
I'll keep it really simple, but I mean, those Benjie and Bill pretty much nailed everything. Time is probably one of our biggest enemies. So we don't all have time to go out there, scout out the low tide, come back 4 hours later, family, work, crazy life. I get it. This seminar kind of put a little spark in me to go out and do some foot pounding on the beach to go figure some stuff out real quick. So we had some more current dope from me. I shot down to Mission Beach, and wow, not much has changed since I was down there last time. Incredible Corbina fishing, sand crabs everywhere. One of the resources I was able to use, because I was down there on a family trip and I just grabbed a rod and hit the beach for about 2 hours. Use the lifeguards. They put signs out, dangerous current, dangerous, riptide. They'll put those signs out. And right there in that current is a great spot to kind of float a sand crab through and let it, as the wave comes up, flip it in there and let it in free spool. Just let your sand crab roll through that trough and you'll get all kinds of fish. And then typically right on both sides of that, it kind of forms a T pretty aggressively. So that whole T, I fish the wings on that, and do really, really well right off the side. Because basically the waves come up from two different directions and then flow out. The riptides are basically wherever that current is coming together from two angles and then flowing out, creating a funnel. So definitely a lot of structure there. And even though it's just sand structure, it is structure. I shot over to Dog Beach, probably one of my, in San Diego down there, right there on Ocean Beach. That's probably one of my favorite spots to fish this time of year. And it did not disappoint again. It was just a small little window. I got to check it out. But big Corbina, there was some croaker in there. It was definitely very, very productive. Again, lots of sand crabs. I usually fish from the jetty, which marks Dog Beach. I'll sit right there at the jetty and just kind of sometimes even stand up on the jetty with my glasses and just look out, and I'll look for those little shadows and flashes and see what part of the trough they're using, and then just go present some sand crabs to them. If I'm fishing other structure, like Santa Ana River mouth up here, if you're, closer to us off Bolsa Chica, the Santa Ana River mouth, I'll start there and just start walking the beach, casting and dragging my sinker through there. And when I find the little pockets, I'll sit there and do more repetitive casting through that pocket. And then just keep walking, and beaches like Bolsa Chica offer a wide variety of fishes. You have no idea what's coming in when you toss a sand crab in there. So, anything from white sea bass, halibut, all in the sand crab, Corbina, spotfin croaker, little sharks. There's a variety of little sharks that we catch in there, rays. Definitely a great spot to build some confidence and then, start branching out and looking for the harder to fish beaches or harder to learn beaches. But use the lifeguards, they set their towers up and they set signs up pretty close to those riptides and kind of mark them for you. So the best thing is get there in the morning before the crowds show up.
Yeah, and also too, if there's a dangerous rip and there's no one swimming in it, you got yourself a clean pathway. But
Yep.
yeah, guys, we're gonna get into some giveaway prizes and stuff here. But first, Ira, talk about the article series that we got going on.
Totally, yeah. So I'm responsible for publishing all of our surf articles, and we've taken a brief hiatus, but there's a lot of exciting stuff coming. So look for that in the next couple of weeks. We're going to publish a bunch of cool stuff. So stay tuned. Check just under fishing and then under surf fishing on bdoutdoors.com.
Yeah, I've seen questions come through about best bait to use. We've definitely covered all that here, but if you haven't, there's tons of articles in there that kind of cover everything you need to know.
Definitely, yeah. We've covered a lot of it has been Bill's writing, and there's just a wealth of knowledge in there that I really, really advise. If you have questions, check that out. There's a ton of different topics ranging from bait selection, rigging, different tides, moon phases, currents, everything. There's so much knowledge. So that's really a great resource.
And maximize our forums too, right? Like I go out when I usually like to come home and I throw up a little post in there, let everybody know, how I usually work from Cardiff down to Solana. Usually spend time close to my house. I let everyone know, how the crabs are doing here, there, how I did. And I like to talk to other people and see how they're doing. Is my local zone dried up? Do I need to actually get in my car and drive somewhere else rather than just ride my bike down to the beach? So, if you're an avid surf fisherman, you should be talking to everyone around you, just like the sport guys talk to their code groups and, the private guys use fish dope, things like that. Communication's key. So don't sleep on the surf fishing forum. But yeah, we got some stuff to give away here. So I got 3 questions. Basically how it's going to work, if you're not familiar, is I'm going to ask the question. You got a live chat and I can see the answers here. They getting fed to me by our team across the hall. So basically we're going to start with a book from Bill Varney, the Light Line Revolution. And then we'll get into the new signature BD and Haggard Pirate hat. We'll throw some stickers in there for you too. And the grand prize will be 3 Lucky Crafts sent to us by Lucky Crafts. So super stoked for that. But so, yeah, my only thing is here, guys, when you type your answer, type it quick, and then once you are selected as the winner, make sure you send us your BD username so I don't have to track you down. We had a little issues last time. I wanna know who you are so I could find you first thing in the morning. So this is an interesting question. Could be straightforward to some of you, might not. We'll figure it out. So here we go. What type of croaker shares a name with a common SoCal offshore species? What type of croaker shares a name with a common SoCal offshore species, if not Mexico? Waiting for the chats to roll in. So in the meantime, oh, wow, that was quick. So Gabe, we got Gabe. Gabe, do us a favor. I know you're a BD member because you have to be to watch this. Gabe, send through your BD username to my buddy Ricky sending me the questions here. So that way you'll get a DM from me in the morning. From my name's Cameron Gamble. You'll get it in your direct messages. That way I can link up and get your address, send it over to Bill. You'll get a book from Bill. Ira, read the second question here.
Alrighty. El Capitan State Beach is known for some of the best surf fishing north of LA. What county is El Capitan State Beach located in?
No, it's easy for you guys. You probably fished all these beaches. Running out of
We're doing
questions.
it now.
4 webinars, 3 a question. I'm tired of the IGFA questions. And this is for the Hager Pirate hat, guys. Dennis got it. All right, Dennis, I saw you live asking questions earlier. Dennis, drop your BD username into that chat so I can send you a DM. You got the new hat, and I'll throw some stickers in there for you too. So here is the final raffle question here, guys. We got 3. Let's see. We got which one's it? We got a Flashman 110.
Also Flashman 110 metallic
What
sardine.
patterns? What patterns are they?
Okay, so we had an anchovy, ghost white sea bass, metallic sardine, all Flashman 110s. According to Benjie, these are great halibut sticks. So, yeah.
Two colors.
This question can either be a layup or a brain thumper. We'll see. I guess it really depends on how you know your beaches. What state beach in San Diego is named after a rare tree that only grows in the wild on the coastline of San Diego County and on Santa Rosa Island? Bill's rattling every time. I see someone typing. That must have been way more of a layup than I thought. He said before I finished, John's fired up. John, there's a lot of Johns here, so please send me your username, or feel free to DM me. Cameron Gamble, John Park. Yeah, DM me on the forums, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow, and I'll get your prizes in the mail before I head out of the office tomorrow for a nice mellow weekend of surf fishing. We are.
Can I give the 3 answers?
Yes.
To see if I was right?
Yes.
Yellowfin croaker.
Mhm.
Yellowfin croaker. Santa Barbara County.
Yes.
Torrey Pines.
Yes, of course. Thanks for reminding me to read off the answers. I forgot that I got Oh, that's funny. Yeah, in case everybody didn't know, it was Yellowfin, Santa Barbara, and Torrey Pines. I really wanted to ask what's the only beach that you might get clocked by a golf ball, but I figured that'd be pretty fun. Well, yeah, Bill, Benjie, Anthony, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Lucky Craft, thank you guys for sponsoring this and sending out prizes. John Park's going to be stoked. These things are great. If you guys don't have your hands on any of these, you should definitely get some. Yeah, and go check out Bill's website, fishthesurf.com. See him on social media. He does all sorts of live events where he goes and hosts seminars on the beach, shows you how to fish. I've been to him before. They're awesome. Benjie, he's very active on YouTube, Instagram, BKF Fishing. Wait, BKF Fishing, BKF Sport Fishing?
Benjie Kim Fishing.
Benjie Kim Fishing. I have you as BK. Yeah, Benjie Kim Fishing.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Watch his YouTube videos. He does stuff from surf fishing to offshore, everywhere else. And then, of course, Save on Tackle, Santa Fe Springs. Anthony, thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. You know, we definitely all benefit from your knowledge. So if you guys, you heard Bill say it before, it's one of the best tackle shops in Southern California. They have everything you need. And if you're watching this webinar, you could go meet Anthony yourself, and he can help you pick out, you know, the ideal rig and point you in the right direction. Instead of watching us on the screen, you can talk to him and go through all of it and make sure everything's handpicked for you. You got anything to say, Iris?
Yeah, just stay tuned for more surf articles coming soon, and check out the new BD Outdoors Haggard Pirate collab. It's live in our store. 2 sweet shirt designs, 3 different hats. Definitely check them out.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Bill, Benjie, Anthony, I can't talk about it enough. Thank you guys so much. We'll have to figure out where to go from here. We got all seasons covered. So here we go. If you guys haven't seen episode 1, 2, and 3, spring or fall is going to come, winter is going to come. These things live on the site in the Surf Fishing channel. So go to the BD Outdoors Nav Bar, find Surf Fishing. You'll find everything you need there, articles, hit the forums, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks for tuning in.